If you're a new manager or hoping to be a new manager, join us in our exploration into what managers need to know. This program will set you up for success by building your knowledge and confidence in the skills you need to be effective.
Managers rise, learn to thrive, gather the skills to keep dreams alive. Big visions, no collision, turn dreams into precision. Get the skills, be the boss, no more time to feel lost. Lead the way, every day, find success, it's here to stay. Understand, take command, hold the future in your hand. Teach and grow, let it show, make the world see your glow. Get the skills.
Hello, I'm Deb Laurel, and I welcome you to What Managers Need to Know. So if you would please sign in so I know where you're coming from, I would appreciate it. And you can do that in the comments. And thank you for coming. Today, we're going to be continuing our series of looking at coaching, and particularly coaching for poor performance, to improve that performance. A little bit about the program itself. And let me get to where we need to be here. Here we go. The whole idea is to provide managers, particularly new managers, with information about management concepts, tools, and tips that will help them be successful in their roles. And we've been looking at delegation prior to this, and now we're looking at coaching. And there are 5 sessions for each theme. After this, we'll be looking at motivation. A little bit about me. I taught for the Executive Management Institute and the Small Business Development Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Business for 30 years. And I've been a workplace learning and performance improvement consultant with my own business for 50 years. So last week, we looked at what coaching involves, and that it's a 3-part series of training, developing, and problem solving. And today, we're going to be looking at why bother to coach at all, because that is a certain management style. We talked last week about the fact that coaching involves a dialogue and mutual problem solving and goal setting, so that if an employee is unwilling to participate in the coaching, coaching can't occur. So why not just tell the employee what to do? Any ideas? It would be much simpler. And it would take less time. So why not just tell the employee what to do? Well, let's look at some of those reasons. First of all, it's important for you as a manager because it's an essential skill set if you want to bring out the best in your employees. And when managers coach employees, they empower them to take ownership of their work, make informed decisions, and strive for excellence. So it's treating the employees as adults because we're not babysitters. There are a number of reasons why we coach employees. One is for improved job satisfaction. Certainly, an employee is going to feel more engaged and satisfied if they have some input into what's going on with their work. And they're going to be then increasingly feeling more motivated and be more productive, because we all like to feel we have some sense of control. Excuse me. Enhance skill development. Part of delegation, and the reason why we delegate, is to help develop the skills of an employee, besides freeing us up from tasks that we no longer should be performing or don't have the expertise to perform, and an employee could do it better than we can. So coaching enables employees to identify areas for improvement and develop new skills, which builds their confidence and their competence. And a lot of employees these days stay when they feel that they have a career development opportunity. And the only way they can feel that is if they are gaining new skills that will help them become more promotable. Let's see. Oh, Tabitha is answering why we shouldn't just tell employees what to do, and that telling them does not help them learn. There's no question about that. And coaching, I think, is meant to create the opportunity to improve for promotion. Yes, which is exactly what we're talking about here. Increased accountability. When we talk about how to coach a poor performer, part of that process is holding that employee accountable for explaining what's going wrong and what they can do to fix it. So this encourages employees to take ownership of their work and be accountable for the results. Because when an employee makes a decision, there are consequences to those decisions. And when we coach, we help the employee see what those consequences are. So they have a greater sense of responsibility and commitment. Heather, you are in the right place to put comments. That you are logged in exactly the right place. So feel free to jump in at any time. And thank you for coming. Another reason why we coach employees is because it opens better communication. To coach, we have to have a dialogue. We need to be asking employees, what do you need? Or why is certain behavior happening? We need to be listening to the answers in terms of what they need or why they're performing poorly. And our whole idea here is to be an active listener and to draw out from them what the issues are and what the proposed solutions are. Now, we, of course, create boundaries for what the proposed solution might be. But that's another reason to coach, because it helps to clarify expectations, resolve issues, and build some trust, some mutual trust. Enhanced collaboration is another reason why we should coach as managers. It leads to better working relationships, increased innovation, and improved outcomes. Even your high performers need to feel that they're part of the conversation. Sometimes as managers, we figure, well, they're doing just fine. We don't need to be talking with them. We don't need to be recognizing their work because they're just good performers and that's enough for them. And that's not true. So we need to collaborate with them. We need to communicate with them. Increased employee retention. Again, if we are coaching to train or develop an employee's skills, particularly regarding tasks that we've delegated, it shows that there's an investment in that employee and that we want them to grow and develop. And as I mentioned just before, there are a number of employees who these days are not going to stay in a job if they don't feel that they're growing, if they don't see that they have some promotional potential. So we've been looking at general reasons why a manager should coach. But what are the consequences of not coaching for performance? What happens if we just let that poor performance slide? Please answer in chat. You get the behavior you tolerate. That is so true, Heather. And do we want the poor performer to set the precedent for what is acceptable performance? And it does spread. Higher performers will get frustrated and potentially leave. Yes, particularly if they're left holding up the fort, if that employee is not performing their job. There can be a lot of resentment. There can be a lot of burnout. People do what others get away with. Yes, absolutely. If the employees see that subpar performance is acceptable, then why should they care? Why should they perform any better than that? So it has a number of negative consequences. Any others that you can think of? Well, you have mentioned a number of the ones that I thought of, and then we can add to them. The consequences of not coaching for improved performance is the employee's performance is tolerated. The other employees' morale and productivity are negatively affected. The other employees have to pick up the slack, which means that they can feel resentful, if not burnout, if they're busy scrambling to do their work as well as the work of the other employee. And the other employees may decide subpar work is acceptable. So all of these reasons are ones that you've identified. Tabitha says, this is an example of caring for those who are not doing the job and letting the others hang out on the limb. Yes, yes. This is so true. There are other consequences. Clearly, productivity is going to suffer. Deadlines aren't going to be met. Customer needs won't be fulfilled. The organization looks bad, and the other employees lose respect for the manager. And I think that should be a very compelling reason why the manager just has to bite the bullet and decide it's time to address this issue and not wait for a while, being afraid of conflict, being afraid of a defensive response. Because last week we looked at, why don't managers coach? Why don't they not confront, but bring up the issue of poor performance with the poor performer and do something about it? And it comes to, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to get them defensive. I don't like conflict. It might make matters worse. Well, I don't know what could be worse than the other employees losing respect for the manager and then performing subpar because that appears to be what is acceptable in that workplace. So this is time for discussion and questions. How do you feel about this? Do you feel we have made a convincing argument that the manager should coach for poor performance? I know it takes time to write comments. I want to be clear about something. It's possible you have experienced what I have experienced, which is where the manager is so taken up with dealing with the poor performer that he or she ignores everybody else. Let's see. Tabitha has says it's part of the job and our responsibility as a leader. Yes, but we also cannot get carried away. The idea of coaching is that we sit down with that employee, we discuss what the issues are, we identify mutually what the plan of action is going to be, and then we follow up. But we cannot forget the other employees. So I'm not suggesting for a moment that coaching for poor performers should take up all of our time. That's not the plan. What takes time is when an employee doesn't participate in coaching, continues with poor performance, and we have to get into the disciplinary route. That takes time. So wouldn't it behoove us, wouldn't it be better if we sit down with that employee as soon as we start to see what the problems are? We come with documentation so that it's not a he said, she said. It's here are the facts. You've been tardy for the past 2 Mondays. What do you think the consequences are when you're not here, when your shift starts? And we draw that from the employee. We don't tell them, we ask them. We want them to reflect. We want them to recognize the consequences and to accept responsibility for them. How long do we allow for the bad performer to be coached? Well, the whole idea, that's a great question, Tabitha. The whole idea is that we sit down with them, we identify what the issues are, we draw from them what the solutions will be, we negotiate what those are, and then we monitor. And we discuss how that's going to be monitored. Are we going to meet every day? Are we going to talk every week? Or what are we going to do? Am I going to stand up and observe you every now and then as you're dealing with customers, for example? What is it that we're going to do to monitor? But if the employee doesn't make any changes, if our monitoring shows that they were just playing along and they have no intention of making a change, then coaching is no longer appropriate. The minute that the employee ignores the coaching or is not open to coaching or does not perform in the way that the coaching discussion led us to believe they would perform, then we're done with coaching and we are into a disciplinary matter. There are some managers who just keep coaching. They keep coaching. And it's a weak response. We have to recognize reality, and we have to recognize when coaching is no longer doing any good. And the coaching stops doing any good when the employee stops allowing themselves to be coached. Any other questions? Or comments? Well, I would love to know your key takeaway from this session, where we've been looking at why we should coach instead of just telling an employee what to do, and why it is so important for us to address poor performance quickly. If you would please put your key takeaway in the chat. Is this information in the handbook? I'm not sure what you're asking, Tabitha. What handbook are we talking about? How can an entrepreneur with limited staff coach bad performers? Coaching ultimately results in a more highly functioning team. Yes, thank you, Heather. That is so true. Let me go back to Tabitha's question. Show it. How can an entrepreneur with limited staff coach bad performers? Well, if you have limited staff, just one bad egg is going to ruin everything for you. So I'm not sure what the question, I think it has to do with time. You want to clarify that a little bit more? Oh, I see. Does the company need a handbook that outlines what happens as a bad performer? Yes, it helps to have an employee handbook that identifies not only, and I'm not giving you legal advice, I'm just telling you what makes practical sense. You have an employee handbook that everyone has read that identifies what their responsibilities are as a member of the organization, what's acceptable performance, what are the consequences of poor performance? Is there a grievance process? What is the disciplinary process? Oh, Heather, that's marvelous. Entrepreneur, bad breath is not better than no breath. Okay. Consider how much time you're spending working around the poor performer. Oh, yes, that's excellent. An excellent observation, Heather. It doesn't matter how many staff you have, but certainly if that person is performing poorly, you need to address it right away. And the coaching is a conversation. This is not necessarily a coaching that we consider happens in a sports arena where we're continually at them and promoting them and encouraging them and advising them. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about having a conversation. If there are some things that the manager needs to do, some what we call system issues, maybe there's a lack of resources or a lack of information that made it difficult for that employee to perform properly, then it's our job to address those issues and take care of them. But other than that, the onus is on that employee. This is what you're expected to. We've discussed what you're doing that's unacceptable. We've discussed what you can do to fix it. We've discussed what our expectations are and what the deadlines are, if there's some work that needs to be completed. And we're going to monitor in this way. Are there expectations? Are the expectations reasonably clear? Yes, we've got to make sure that they are. And after a coaching, it's important to have that employee write up what the understanding is, because then you can make sure that they've understood what's expected. We don't want to just have an undocumented conversation. Develop an improvement plan together. They need to come up with and buy into the plan. You do that together. It's a mutual discussion, but they do need to buy in. If they don't buy in, if they refuse coaching, which can happen, then we discuss, here are the consequences. You're making a choice. If you choose not to be coached, if you choose not to participate in this coaching process, then here are the consequences. Are those acceptable to you? And whether they're acceptable or not, those are the consequences. And it is an improvement plan. Heather, you must be an HR person. And a good one, because you're clear here. So are they aware their performance is not meeting expectations? Are the expectations reasonably clear? Develop an implementation plan together. They need to come up with and buy into the plan. That's a very good summary of what we're looking for when we meet with an employee to coach them. What we're going to be doing next week, let's get to this. We're going to be looking at when to coach. When to coach, when coaching is not appropriate, so that we know we're not wasting our time. Key takeaway from Tabitha. Let me get to this. I need to establish my expectations and set time aside to coach those who may need more support to succeed within the company and become a great option for promotion. Amen. Absolutely. And Heather, you're free to make choices and take action. You are not free from the consequences of those actions and choices. Yes, amen. You're both wonderful. Thank you so much for participating. And you have enriched the conversation enormously, and I sincerely appreciate that. So we have looked at what coaching involves last week. We've looked at why coach this week. We'll look at when to coach next week. What are the coaching triggers, and when do we not coach? So thank you so much for coming. Let me get to this here. And I hope that you'll join me next time. I really do hope that you will, because you've been wonderful. Let's see. So Tabitha, I need to go to, I don't know where to go, Tabitha. End stream.
Thank you so much for coming and participating in our discussion of what managers need to know. You can find the videos of this and previous sessions on my YouTube channel or under events on my LinkedIn profile. I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.